Warning! The following video contains a high amount of hat-wearing gamers' opinion. It may be different to your own. This is life. Hello everyone and welcome to my review of Mario & Luigi Partners in Time for the Nintendo DS as part of Mario & Luigi series talk. I would advise starting with Superstar Saga if you haven't already seen that video, and much like that video, this one will also be in-depth and contain many spoilers. Hi. What?
Partners in Time. Remember what happened last time?
Oh yeah, I remember that day. That was fun. Wait, did they find out about this review and leave another note?
No, I just saw the ending of the Superstar Saga review and anticipated it.
Well, if that's the case, then I'm not letting you stop me until there's an actual threat.
Then I'll stay here the entire review and you'll see.
Alright then. Mario & Luigi Partners in Time came out in 2006, where I live, for the Nintendo DS, carrying Superstar Saga's legacy, but instead of placing Luigi in the spotlight, it instead placed Baby Mario and Baby Luigi in the spotlight by allowing them to do some adventuring of their own. But did that work out as well as Superstar Saga did? I'm Hat-Wearing Gamer, and this is Mario & Luigi Partners in Time. The game starts out with a small cutscene showing the Shroobs plotting to invade, which demonstrates who the Shroobs are and delivers it straight forward. They're creepy and they want somewhere else to call home. Next we cut to the past Peach's castle, where young Toadsworth calls Baby Mario and Baby Luigi to play with Baby Peach, but right before you do, you're given control of them so you can run around and experiment with their jump buttons X and Y. Mario and Luigi keep their A and B buttons respectively, while the DS hardware supports a mechanics extension for the babies, complementing part of Superstar Saga's design philosophy. Quickly the babies find some fainted toads and Prince Bowser attempting his first kidnapping of Princess Peach. Baby Mario steps up and fights Prince Bowser to mirror the fight Mario had with Bowser at the start of Superstar Saga, but I find this one less effective and I'll get into why momentarily. After you beat Prince Bowser, the Shroobs kick in and start attacking. That's all you see of them for the moment, but now we travel to the present day era of adult Mario and Luigi. Professor e.gadd has built a time machine and sends Peach along with two toads back to the past and doesn't send Mario and Luigi along with them. Because that'd be smart, and we can't let smart things like that happen, or otherwise there wouldn't be a game. Play begins with Toadsworth knocking himself out. Mario heads off to Toadsworth's quarters to fetch a refresh room, and this is your chance to run around as Mario in the bright and colourful castle similar to the Toad Town Square portion in Superstar Saga. It contains similar tutorials to the Toad Town Square, such as the action icons, but this place is much bigger and everything is more spread out and harder to find than in Superstar Saga. A Toad also confirms that Mario's jump is good by making you do it, and the game makes sure you know this by placing the refresh room where jumping is required. In Superstar Saga, the game offers you an unrequired mushroom for a jump. This one is required, but getting it is seamless, and I would call that an improvement. Back at Toadsworth, we have this guy who I love. Are you dead yet? Can I have your cane? Mario heals Toadsworth and the time machine returns. It's wrecked and out comes a Shroob alien named Junior Shrooboid, who Mario fights on his own. This battle's a little extension from the previous one, for it teaches counter-attacking, which is fine, but it seems unnecessary to explain the timing of other commands again. After this battle, a time hole appears in the castle courtyard and Mario, along with Luigi, head over to investigate, but before that happens, a Toad tests Luigi's jump. His short jump followed by his high jump help create a distinction that would soon be clear by the baby's jumps. The time travel science seems somewhat unconventional, since usually in science fiction, time travel takes you to the same location relative to Earth in a different period of time, but there's no point in getting your knickers in a knot over it because all time travel science is fiction and any rules to it are man-made. Right after Mario and Luigi land, a suitcase comes out of the time hole and lands on Luigi. It has a face, a name, Stuffwell, and most unfortunately, a voice box. Stuffwell has a reputation for being disruptive and not shutting up. Its biggest offense happens immediately in the next area. This is one of the most mundane tutorials I've ever seen in video games. Stuffwell talks you through jumping up steps and across gaps. Why is this necessary? When the Toad meets Mario and Luigi and quickly runs A and B jumping over them, it should be obvious what the buttons do. Even if you forget, the icons are on the screen reminding you that you can do that. And by the way, I would actually sooner press A and B together for jumping up steps and one after the other for crossing gaps. In Superstar Saga you have the spikes with the sign telling you how to get past, and if you're experienced, you jump over them like it's nothing. The pointlessness of this tutorial is still present in the block section. It's really obvious who can and can't hit which blocks. Stuffwell continues with battle tutorials, much like the Koopa ones in Superstar Saga, and you're also given another unnecessary tutorial on how to use items outside of battle by opening the suitcase with Start. Start opens the suitcase? Rejoice! When you arrive in Holly Jolly Village, you find the place being attacked by the Shroobs. Mario and Luigi fight some Shroobs in a battle that leads to a forced death scenario. Meanwhile, the babies, along with Baby Peach, are found in the Koopa Cruiser. The babies are summoned up to the bridge, and on the way, they have their own version of the jumping practice, which is much shorter and far better. If the adult one was more like this, then I think it would have been a much smoother process. There's no actual major differences between the design, it's just not handheld. At the bridge, some things happen, then due to some poor piloting, they end up hovering over Holly Jolly Village. They notice unconscious Mario and Luigi, and so Bowser's like, I don't feel like helping them. Then Peach is like, help them, or so help me, I will scream in your ears. Bowser fires at the standing Shroobs, tells Baby Peach to shut up, and several years down the track he falls in love with her. My goodness. So the babies jump out of the Koopa Cruiser, find Mario and Luigi, and then some more Shroobs come and challenge the babies. In this fight, Toadsworth also steps in and introduces Bros items which act as this game's Bros moves. However, there are two major differences. Rather than being based off of field moves like in Superstar Saga, they're based on Mario-esque items. Some of these items were first seen in Partners in Time, but they still fit into the Mario universe. Despite my praise for the coexisting moves in Superstar Saga, I can't say I hate this way either, because much like Fire and Thunder Bros in battle, I still like the attacking moves in their own right. All of the button inputs in every move feel just as natural as they did in Superstar Saga, and there's no move I hate. Unfortunately though, some moves become replacements for others, such as the red shells replacing the green shells, the trampolines replacing the cannon which are then replaced by the copy flower, and the mix flowers replacing the fire flowers. But throughout the game, I find myself jumping around which moves I wish to use. In Superstar Saga, I talked about how Chopper Bros and Knockback Bros advance are my main moves, but here, I don't have main moves because I find all of them useful and effective in most situations. We'd be here all day if I talked about all of them, so I'm going to talk about my favourite move, the Pocket Chomps. I know I said I don't have a main move, but favourite and main are two different things. I find the Pocket Chomps to be an incredibly unique move in not just Partners in Time, but in Mario and Luigi as a whole. You jump on the enemy as Mario or Luigi and smack them with a hammer as the baby if you so choose. Usually you whack your hammer with the corresponding baby after the jump, but when things get faster, the babies may be the other way around, and when you hit the wrong one, the chomp moves faster. I find it to be a more creative move, fun to use, and risky with the baby's uses. I just remember being a kid and thinking, why won't the chomp attack the enemy for me? The other difference is the items are limited by their own quantitative amounts. Rather than each move deducting from something like the Bros points in Superstar Saga, you have an exact number of each item in your inventory. They behave similarly to healing items, as in you can stock up on them in stores and take a turn to use them in battles. I believe this format has one minor advantage and one minor disadvantage. The disadvantage is that if you don't know what you're going to be up against next, you won't know what moves you'll need. With the Bros points, you just fill up the stat and decide in battle what you want to do. Although the items are so cheap, you can prepare for any situation, and so it becomes almost a non-issue. The advantage is a little simplicity that comes with it because the system is more straightforward and there's one less stat to worry about. But the Bros points were structured like HP, making removal of that system pointless because you still have to deal with it. There's also the technical possibility that you could run out of items, but you can also run out of syrup in Superstar Saga, and running out of syrup is more detrimental than running out of an item. I honestly can't decide which format I prefer, but I did always like that in the grand scheme of Mario and Luigi, one game did something like this different. So Toadsworth teaches you to use Bros moves fairly well, and all of them return to the Koopa Cruiser to hear the tale of everything that happened in the past up until now, including why Toadsworth and the babies were technically in Bowser's territory. The characters also see Peach's castle. Wait, it's called Peach's Castle in this time period? She's a baby! What is she doing with a castle? So they receive a message from Princess Shroob at the renamed Shroob Castle, who speaks a strange Shroob language which becomes a theme for the game. No one knows what she's saying, but the Shroobs end up firing a missile at them, causing the cruiser to land in Bowser's castle. Mario, Luigi and Stuffwell emerge from the cruiser, and the other characters are nowhere to be found. After some walking around, they run into the babies, where you're taught how to travel as a group of 4. And now that they're all together, I have some questions. So if this game was supposed to be about the babies in the same way Superstar Saga was about Luigi, then why do we see the babies before the adults? Why do we play as the babies before the adults? Why do we fight as the babies before the adults? Why do we fight as Mario and Baby Mario alone respectively? Why are the adults in the forced death scenario? Why are the babies taught how to use the Bros items first? Here's how I think the opening should have played out up to this point. We have our Shroob's opening cutscene like we did before. We then jump to the present with the Time Machine events, followed by an adult Bowser fight as adult Mario. We then cut to the past with the Prince Bowser encounter, which may not even have a fight, and see the Shroobs invade. Go back to the present from the point where Toadsworth knocked himself out. Include Luigi in the Junior Shrooboid fight, have Mario and Luigi go back to the past to Holly Jolly Village, create an excuse for the Koopa Cruiser to come down and send the babies into Holly Jolly Village where they experience the forced death scenario, have the adults fight off the Shroobs that took the babies down, allow Toadsworth to come by, find them, and bring them aboard the cruiser and teach using Bros items to the adults initially in Bowser's castle before they meet the babies. Some of the edges might need to be smoothened out, but I really do think it helps with the storytelling. After becoming a group of 4, you receive tutorials in field and attacking moves doable as a group of 4. I like how it subtly expands on Superstar Saga's way from before. When you fight as a group of 4, you can do more things, but those things are limited when in pairs. This is similar to how in Superstar Saga, fighting and travelling solo is less effective than when the bros are together. Although interestingly, travelling as a group of 4 in Partners in Time has less utility than pairs as you learn moves throughout the game. As a result, you can split into pairs at any time, making the separation less significant than it was in Superstar Saga, but I don't think the game is dampened by this because it capitalizes on the mechanic well. In a lot of areas, there's a reason to divide. That said, you can't divide any further into individuals or place Luigi in the front, but since there's enough utility in the game across both pairs, it really didn't bother me. The rest of Bowser's Castle teaches and tests you on utilizing the 4 to the best of their abilities, and at the end we have this shine, sprite, lighting up the room thing, which is weird and kind of pointless. If there was a way to involve the adults, then it might be a little bit more interesting. At the end we have Partners in Time's nod to Mario RPG, followed by a sparkling shard. We don't know anything about it, but it looks nice. The 4 of them find Toadsworth, who's just there to be annoying, and they return to the present. The 4 of them meet with e.gadd, who explains that what they found is a Cobalt Star Shard, a part of the object that powered the time machine. No one knows why it's broken or how part of it got to Bowser's Castle, but it does open another time hole which takes you to the Toadwood Forest in the past. And there's also this cutscene, which I guess is important. In the forest you meet Totoko, who was with Peach on the trip to the past, and she explains what's happening to her mushroom power, otherwise known as her Vim. The Vim is used to create fuel for the ships, which makes me question how the Shroobs got into the Mushroom Kingdom in the beginning, but shut up. The bros travel into the woods and are introduced to ditches the babies can enter for goodies, which is required in the Fire Hollow Stumps section. I honestly don't know what to call this. It's simply a task of hitting blocks which require separation of the pairs, nothing too terribly significant. I'm also impressed that the fires don't burn down the entire forest. Moving on to the next area, we have waiting on platforms. And more waiting on platforms. And this block. This is just the game's way of being like, I want all 4 of you here. These blocks see better usage at other parts of the game, but when all 4 of them are required in one location, it seems rather pointless. Now, inside the Vim factory, wait, what? Vim factory? Isn't Vim what's going into the factory? Aren't you supposed to name a factory after what's coming out of the factory? You don't name it after what's going into the factory, you name the factory after what you're making in the factory! So in the Shroob Ship Fuel Factory, you meet 2 Hammer Bros with mind control helmets. These helmets place them under Shroob authority, and they speak in a very mid-noughties leet, which I find hilarious. They send the adults away and fight the babies as the boss of Toadwood Forest. It's not a difficult fight, not that many of the fights in this game are difficult at all, but I like the hidden message in the attacks. When they perform well, the target will land and you need to jump to avoid damage. But if they mess up the performance, the attack messes up too, meaning you shouldn't jump to avoid damage. It's a nice little touch. When you win, the helmets come off and they're back to normal. As a thank you gift, the Hammer Bros give the babies hammers and a tutorial for using them. You have smacking things with Baby Mario as you would expect, and Luigi's dunk from Superstar Saga returns. It comes in the form of some spinning move that allows the babies to tunnel underground. How is this done? I may never know, but it gives baby Luigi an excuse to get his hammer out. So what of it? You also change the both hammer moves in the action icons by simply pressing either L or R. It leaps away from the Superstar Saga philosophy, which I praised, but this is far simpler and doesn't have you smacking the buttons through the cycles until you got it right. So the babies go off to find the adults and a few good puzzles that get you used to the hammers, but it also contains breakable crates that you never see past the Vim factory. Like seriously, why would a game teach and test you on breaking crates if they never come back? Up next we have a hammers tutorial for battle, so if you miss having every field move in battle, you still have the hammers. The tutorial itself likes a soft lock at this point every time I play it. Is this just my cartridge or is it others? My copy of the game was secondhand, so it may have been subjected to a misdeed. To demonstrate this, I'm going to show you on my 3DS right now. Now, where... Where's my 3D? Oh, come on! I hope she realizes there's no game card in that thing. The tutorial's still fine, although it does cover Baby Luigi's defense on top of Baby Mario's, which I think is rather irrelevant. You only need to show it once and just point out that Baby Luigi is controlled by the Y button. After you rescue the adults, you get tutorialized on using hammers as a group of 4 and move on to the next area of the factory. You have another split up section with more hammer usage for the babies, while the adults just stand there and watch with the occasional block for them to hit. We have another lift section, which is as fun as the ones from the forest, followed by the next boss, Swiggler. Swiggler is the shrewd version of Wiggler. I appreciate this game's effort to make the contracted appearance of a Wiggler in the Mario game not a regular Wiggler but something different. It has its angry trait, but the formula to calm it down is different. You attack the shrewd doctors when they hold a poison mushroom, and Swiggler will drink the Vim, or whatever the drink is at this point, which powers it down. For a boss battle, it's an interesting puzzle, but much like Hoo Hoo Ross from Superstar Saga, it's a little complicated for this early in the game. When you win, you get another Cobalt Star Shard, followed by young Bowser snatching it along with the one you already had. You return to the present, where e.gadd informs Stuffwell and the bros that time holes have been appearing at random. Nothing explains why, but it sure is convenient, otherwise we'd be stuck, just like here. Moving on, we learn new moves, and guess who teaches them? It's the Toadsworths! Yeah! You'd think you'd learn new moves from characters who look like they have histories with the abilities like in Superstar Saga. Nope. Here it's just the old and young Toadsworth who met each other only moments ago and have mastered a move called the Toadsworth Twist. This is basically the spin jump from Superstar Saga with Luigi standing on top, and you use it to get to the next time hole on the second floor. This one takes you to Yoshi's Island under the attack of a shrewd monster named e.gadd, and a classic tune. Whilst there, the bros meet Carly Cooper, an enthusiastic journalist for the Cooper Chronicle who's one of my favourite characters. They also discover some Yoshis who flee at the sound of e.gadd's presence. After they leave, e.gadd eats the Yoshis and tries to eat Kylie and the bros, but is unsuccessful. After this, the bros discover Kamek searching for Yoshi cookies to give to Bowser on top of the cliff. I feel like this conversation was put in just for the sake of that communication, but it does have a purpose. Kamek opens the way forward and you see a cloud high above the ground that the babies can go up to, which introduces you to using them. In the next hut they pass some Yoshi cookies, and in secret Luigi picks up 4 of them, and they're distributed as you progress throughout the game. A nice additive I always liked. The first one goes to baby Luigi right then and there because he pokes his head in, and it's also a nice little moment. Moving on, you're taught how to use water fountains. In this game we have the babies using them because they have the hammers, and there's one nice extra feature which is choosing how many water shots you have, up to 9. The major downside is that you don't have the utility of spitting water out in various different ways like in Superstar Saga, and the tutorial is excessively long and boring. Kamek also lights fires around the place, and you have to use the water spitting mechanic to put them out. There's this nice part where you spit water through pipes from a cave so the adults can spin across to hit a block to progress. I do like how when the babies go into a baby exclusive area, they go into the top screen. This can be good for monitoring both pairs, but they do have to stay rather close to each other, otherwise the babies will be warped out of where they are and this could potentially confuse you. I find that splitting up is well utilized in Yoshi's Island and takes good advantage of both caves and clouds. At the top of the mountain, the bros run into Kamek and Bowser. After the babies eat the cookies like gluttons, Bowser freaks out and Kamek fights them. In Yoshi's Island on the Super Nintendo, Kamek acted as an ongoing antagonist, and I believe that having Kamek as the boss of Yoshi's Island is a nod to that game, which is something that I appreciate. The boss itself is very simple. He divides into 5, but with the bros file, that's pretty much a non-issue. This move can catch you off guard if you're not careful, but otherwise, just attack him. Once Kamek is beaten, Bowser and the bros are eaten by e.gadd. When inside, Luigi gives 2 more Yoshi cookies to each of the babies to calm them down. Mario wakes up and they establish a dead end, then baby Mario reveals in the background of the cutscene that these lights cycle colours as you hit them. They go up and find a Yoshi trying to push a chomp rock, shouts to Yoshi's Island, but failing to move it. Moving this rock opens the way forward, so rather than Mario and Luigi helping to push it, you have to go and rescue some Yoshis around the area. Most of these tasks are pretty good, except this one, it just feels too unnecessarily overboard. When the rock is pushed forward, you can proceed through a path of enemies including a dry bones? Isn't this a shroob zone? Doesn't you reject anything Koopa-like? I don't get it. And I guess this also calls into question how Bowser got eaten. Moving on, we have this cool little egg timing challenge and a guy named Toadbert who was with Peach and Totoko. He lost his memory except an image which he drew on a piece of paper depicting Peach, the Cobalt Star and Princess Shroob. The image is important so Mario and Luigi hold on to it, but they can't do much with it right now. In the next room you meet Sunnyside, who reveals Bowser's location in one of the eggs and he's wanting help, but before that can happen, you must fight Sunnyside. Sunnyside is another puzzle, and although not complicated, it's very time consuming. Hatching 5 Yoshis sounds simple, but the eggs take quite a beating before they open, and it doesn't help when Sunnyside itself throws the eggs and sometimes leaves none behind when it's your turn. Also, when I was younger, I typically screamed at the Yoshis after they pushed the chomp rock over to prepare another rock. It's definitely a side thing, but it makes the battle feel less believable. When you leave, Yub dies because apparently the eggs were keeping it alive, which was pretty convenient for the plot. You discover the Yoshis are safe, but are also deceived as Bowser is claiming the credit for saving them. You get the Cobalt Star Shards back and they knock Bowser out of the park, literally, but I have one huge gripe with this area. The Yoshis are stupid. When danger was near, they left their hiding place rather than staying in it. One of them demanded sense from Yub and walked right in its path. One of them kept trying to push a rock by themselves, always getting nowhere, and to top it all off, they believed Bowser, an enemy from Yoshi's Island, at his word. The bros return to the present, Stuffle updates e.gadd, and you learn another new move from the Toadsworths. How? This starts off with an uncomfortable cutscene, and then Mario's desired knowledge for a move. The Bros Ball is fun to use because it's fast, but it's not very useful practically. You use it to climb stairs in a very artificial setup in the castle. In fact, most of the times you're required to use this move is in an artificial setup. I will grant that there are a few times where this is not the case, but otherwise it feels like the Fire Bros from Superstar Saga, although a little better because you don't have to power it up or position yourself. By the way, I must ask, who in the castle decided to lock the back balcony behind these stairs? Through the time hole we have Gritzy Desert, and with it comes some fantastic music if you ask me. We have a bit of story where the bros try to get inside the Koopa Sand but are stopped. Kylie Koopa turns up and talks to Mario about a secret entrance while one Shroob humorously interacts with Luigi and the babies. The bros set off to open the secret entrance, which requires them to divide up. The Outs go to the east side of the desert, either via the cannon, which is just there to make the Bros Ball useful, or the mini game, which is just there to make the Bros Ball useful. When you find the corresponding Drybone statue, it's just hit this block. I like the idea of having to hit them within 10 seconds of each other, but these colored blocks are not necessary. When you're inside, Kylie and the bros peek through some windows to what is apparently every single Shroob celebrating the conquest of the Mushroom Kingdom. Before we go on, 2 minor problems. 1, not everyone is there, and 2, by celebrating they're letting their guard down. Hey, Mushroom Kingdom, they're distracted! Quick, destroy the Koopa Seum! Reclaim your land! In this, Princess Shroob delivers an address to the Shroobs and sends the adult Peach in to be eaten by P. Piranha. The bros are in shock and Kylie Koopa gets kidnapped right under their noses, so they continue to explore the Koopa Seum on their own. In this, we have some sort of practical use of the Bros Ball. The design is still somewhat artificial, but it's still pretty fun. I do wish there was an actual challenge here though, because I genuinely cannot think of a way to accidentally fail in this area. After another dark room, the bros unintentionally find themselves in the center of an arena surrounded by the Shroobs. It always seemed silly to me that the bros mindlessly wound up on stage because you'd think they'd know what they're doing on some level. Nonetheless, it is pretty funny what happened, so Princess Shroob calls the next boss Shrooboid Brat. I find that Shrooboid Brat is one of the more enjoyable bosses. It's a boss of audience participation. The crowd works with the enemy and what that does is bring a sense of fighting the entire Shroob race. I also like the comical lollipop which goes into being a brat. There is a downside though, sometimes it can be tricky when the vote count is close, but that doesn't matter because you can jump both pairs. After the battle, the Shroob smack a hole in the ground and send the bros down to Gritzy Caves. Gritzy Caves is the Partners in Time rendition of the Mario Bros cave music, which I find to be very jazzy. While in the caves, Kylie Koopa also gets eaten by PD. We have this fun game and a joyful jingle that I love. It's so random and happy, I love it. At the end of the cave, the bros meet Petey and battle him. I feel like the last little bit of the game was building up to this fight, which was pretty nice, and the quicksand move was cool because it's a little different to most moves seen in both Partners in Time and Superstar Saga. Other than that, the boss was pretty forgettable. Like seriously, I never remember this thing. When you beat Petey, Kylie Koopa comes out in addition to a new Cobalt Star Shard. I mean, I guess that's the story reason why they went through that time hole. I only went just because the Toadsworth suggested it. Kylie testifies to Peach being spat out of Petey, which makes the plot point feel pointless. It just becomes a plot. I suppose it helps that next the bros find Peach nearby with a shroob-like mushroom on her face. They return to the present, as you would expect. The world structure makes the game feel more chapter-based like Paper Mario rather than the smooth flow of Superstar Saga. The castle just feels like a hub and every area feels disconnected from the world at large. The only way to travel between any area is to go back to the present and find the right time hole that takes you back to the right area in the past. There's also no fast travel, which to be fair isn't a big deal, but the reason it's not a big deal is because the world doesn't have much in it. The game doesn't make you go back to other areas, and there's nothing new to explore in old areas as you gain new moves. There is an exception to this, but I'll get to that in a bit. By the way, with the Bros Ball move, you can now go down to the castle basement. I was going to talk about it before the Gritzy area, but then I forgot, and when I remembered, I couldn't figure out a way to write it into the script, so we're talking about it now. Stop looking at me. Look at her. Wait, is that my Dragon Ball manga? How did she get that? When did she pick that up? So in the basement you can follow a cloaked figure through some pipes to discover that it's Vorpal. Vorpal returns with the charisma he had in Superstar Saga and tells you the story of Superstar Saga from his perspective. The story leads into how he began running Vorpal's Bean and Badge shop, where you can trade beans you dig out of the ground to buy exclusive badges, which is nice. By the way, digging for beans is the one reason to backtrack anywhere in this game. The basement is otherwise useless for now. So Peach stays in her quarters while the bros learn new moves from, guess who? The Toadsworth again! Although these moves are actually quite cool and useful. You have the ability to spin jump into the babies and they launch rather high to access more areas. You then immediately, with a rough transition, learn to use the Bros Ball to flatten the babies to fit them through flat gaps, and they can ride up fans as well as glide from them. After learning these moves, the game blows wind that sends Baby Peach into a small room which is supposedly going to test you on both moves, but it is possible to get her with only using the baby's spin. Besides, I thought the test was in the tutorial. No other move made you do this, although given how much I enjoyed it, I kinda wish they did. By the way, these moves are equivalent to Bros moves from Superstar Saga by applying one move to the other half of the people you're with. I just wish that the babies digging underground could have interacted with the adults in some way. After learning the moves, adult Bowser turns up and steals Peach after being inspired by a horoscope. By jumping, he breaks the floor and he and Peach fall through a time hole below, and a hand appears as if going there wasn't obvious enough. The bros make their way to the time hole and appear at the foot of the Volcano along with music that is way too catchy. I must admit, I think this soundtrack is better than Superstar Saga's. I found more memorable tracks here such as Gritzy Desert, the Mario Bros. Underground music, Thwomp Volcano, boss battles and the final boss. Interestingly, I was never sure the final boss music fit into the fight, but I still found it memorable. Back on Thwomp Volcano, the climbing involves using flattening and spinning into the babies to get places. It's a fine experience and the design doesn't allow a chance for the moves to get boring, and using the bros spin to power up the fan is perhaps the best use of all 4 bros at once in the game. At the top they find Peach's tiara and the volcano decides to explode with some mighty fine convenient timing, and so they head down to young e.gadd's lab. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this interaction is the first and only time in all Mario games where e.gadd reveals his first name to be Elven, which is a bit of hot trivia. Some fiery Thwomp Rocks land in the lab which the bros put out, and then right after the game does this. This is some of the weirdest stuff I've ever seen in a video game, and I'd go into detail, but that would just be even more confusing. They all escape the lab where e.gadd departs for the woods to study ghosts, a nice nod to Luigi's mansion. Now we receive a transmission from e.gadd of the present saying he's going to send in some water, and a message like that from 20 or so years in the future is also weird, but like I said earlier, time travel science is man-made, so we just have to accept that they can do that. It is worth mentioning that I don't see any inconsistency in the time travel mechanics in this game, generally speaking. As the bros travel between time periods, they seem to travel the exact same amount of time backwards and forwards right down to the second, which helps the story make sense in its progression. For example, young Bowser steals the Cobalt Star Shards from the bros in the forest, and when they go to Yoshi's Island, young Bowser still has them. The bros haven't gone to a point in time where young Bowser didn't have them. If there are problems, however, it's how some of the characters respond to the events. For example, the older versions of Toadsworth, e.gadd, Bowser, Mario, and Luigi don't remember these events in the past. By the way, the state of the present would pretty much predetermine that the Shroobs will be defeated in the end. Where were we? Oh, that's right. e.gadd uses his new invention, the Hydrogush 4000, to send water to the pass, which conveniently lands at the top of the volcano, putting it out. The bros return to the top of the volcano and see a Thwomp couple upset over the volcano's lack of lava. Mrs. Thwomp proceeds to accuse the bros of doing it and fights them. She isn't a difficult boss, but she can get annoying a couple of times. If you're in the middle of an attack, it may just stop, and usually when that happens, you've beaten your enemy. But here, the attack stops so that she can divide into 4. Dividing into 4 isn't bad, but I find stopping the attack just to show this borderline's frustration, because you're likely to think that you beat her just to find out that you didn't. One other interesting thing about Mrs. Thwomp is that she, in the long run, is not really against the bros. We have the upcoming Bowser's fight and the earlier Kamek fight, which are characters who were on principle against the bros, and every other boss fight is directly against the Shroobs. What's interesting about this is that every time you go through a time hole with the intention of taking on the Shroobs, finding more Cobalt Stars and possibly rescuing Peach, you end up fighting a boss related to the Shroobs. When you go to Yoshi's Island, you're pursuing young Bowser and end up fighting Kamek, and on Thwomp Volcano you're pursuing adult Bowser and you end up fighting Mrs. Thwomp and the Bowsers later on. The only exception to this is Sunnyside, because Stuffwell is still keen on finding young Bowser in the shards after they get eaten by Yoob. When you beat Mrs. Thwomp, we have some couple drama and the bros go down the crater. We see a cutscene of young and adult Bowser meeting to set up what's to come, then we return to the bros ready to explore the Thwomp Caverns. Thwomp Caverns has a somber remix of the Thwomp Volcano music and a heck of a lot of minigames. Minigames may be artificial, but it's okay when run by an NPC because they're supposed to be artificial. I do find the games to be fun, although this Thwomp says he'll open the path if you just play the game. I think this game should have been collect X number of jewels and he'll open up the path, similar to this game which is later on. Sadly, there's not much in this place when it comes to Volcano stuff or actual Thwomp related stuff, but I still enjoy the minigames. At the bottom you meet both young and adult Bowser who have teamed up in a similar fashion to how the adult bros have teamed up with the babies. This is especially emphasized in the fight against them. From the start of this boss, you can only attack adult Bowser in the same way that the adult bros can only be attacked by enemies. While I'm on that, I want to point out a bit of relief that comes with this format of taking hits. If one bro dies in Superstar Saga, the live one picks them up for dodging, and as a result, the button input has some delay to it. I think this was supposed to emphasize that you should keep both alive, but often a different enemy attacks before the live bro gets a turn, meaning that if one bro dies, the other will soon go down too. This is a non-issue in Partners in Time because if an adult dies, the respective baby takes over, meaning that if one person dies, you have a greater chance to revive them before the rest of your team goes down. Back to the Bowser fight. I think it's a good fight. It imitates the adult and baby structure of the bros, the attacks are Bowser-like, none of the attacks are terrible, and the music is intense but also kind of soothing. When you beat them, the Bowsers are launched out of the volcano by an intense column of lava. Adult Bowser falls off and lands in the time hole, and young Bowser lands on the Shroom Mothership. The Mothership proceeds to break into the volcano and abduct Peach and the bros, and I love this voice clip. The bros wind up inside the Mothership and do some puzzles. I do enjoy the aesthetic of these areas and what's inside them is cool, especially the second part with the block and the darkness. There's not much else to the ship from the gameplay standpoint. Instead, there are just a bunch of cutscenes where Peach is revealed to be Princess Shroob in disguise, Carly Cooper turns up and they all get caught and booted off the ship and young Bowser breaks in and hides. I mean, it is all relevant to the plot, but most of it's boring. Carly falls towards Yoshi's Island and right on top of Toadbird, resulting in the return of his memory. The bros, on the other hand, fall with style into Toad Town. Toad Town is based on dividing up into pairs and traversing half the town as the adults and the other half as the babies, similar to a portion of Joke's End in Superstar Saga. It seems like a nice idea and I believe it was executed well, but the fallback for me is that I actively avoid fighting because I'm less than keen to do so as a pair, but you're not split up for too long so it's not too terribly significant. You can take a time hole back to the present if you want to shop and heal, otherwise this blue pipe takes you to Star Hill. Stuffwell says the Cobalt Star is acting up and wants to go to the top of the hill, and so they walk up. It's not anything super special, which is kind of lame, but I like its pleasant environment. At the top of the hill you meet the most random boss ever, Commander Shroob. He's random because you don't really know anything about him. The fight just seems to start, and when you beat him, he just dies and you move on as if nothing happened. The fight itself though is one of my favourite bosses in the game. The puzzle involves killing precisely the right support Shroob to expose the commander, otherwise you die, and unlike Uros from Superstar Saga, this boss puzzle is appropriately placed nearer to the end of the game. At the top of the hill you meet the Star Sprite that lives in the Cobalt Star, who basically tells you that Princess Shroob broke the Cobalt Star and that finding 2 of the 3 remaining shards will open up Shroob Castle. The The sprite also opens the way forward to the Star Shrine, which is basically this game's version of Joke's End. It's long, it's a really bright blue, and has a monotonous soundtrack. The worthiness star thing gate doesn't add anything to the game, although getting the Aurora block was pretty good. The rest of the shrine is okay. I really enjoyed joining the coloured lights and exploring this area, and then the rest of it's just walking through rooms and fighting baddies. But nearer to the end, the plot just dumps 2 cobalt stars right on you in quick succession. Kylie and Toadbert come via Lakitu travel, and I just love that that's a thing in the Mushroom Kingdom. The whimsical characters and humour in this game are excellent, arguably better than Superstar Saga, even as the bros relate to each other in cutscenes. The characters have so much personality, and Forful also decided to stop by and add to it. From the start where one Toad says Toadsworth KO'd himself, to here where we have an actual business called Lakitu Travel, Partners in Time nails characters. What it doesn't nail, here in the Star Shrine, is progression. You find the 4th Cobalt Star Shard, and then Toadbert turns up with the 5th one. You may not get it straight away, but you do get it when you beat the next boss, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Right before the next boss, you find Kylie and Toadbert on the ground, and Toadbert asks you to rub off the dirt on his drawing, which reveals another figure. And by the way, this is the only time the game requires usage of the DS touchscreen. So before Toadbert explains anything, him and Kylie are transformed into purple mushrooms, and the Elder Shrewdboy appears and fights you. The only thing tricky about him are the spikes on his head preventing jumping, but that doesn't last long. This fight also features a threatening Shroob ship, which is really cool for the following reason. At the start of the game, Mario and Luigi were in a forced death scenario, and now that same situation comes back, but this time you can prevent it. There is nothing quite like being helpless against something in the beginning and having the ability to stop it later on. There's also this interesting point where choosing which bro to defend this kind of attack with actually matters, and the countdown helps keep you on your toes. When you beat him, you just return to the present, e.gadd's like good luck, and you're on your merry way to the top floor for the final time hole. Shrewd Castle is a great final area for a lot of good reasons. First off, we have the resemblance to the hub. This area is the same location as somewhere you're already so familiar with, except covered by the enemy's decorations. It's clear that this is your turf and it's been taken away from you by someone else, and that's something this game does really well actually. There's a strong presence of the enemy across the whole game. From the baddies to the bosses to the leavings, a lot of things are saying that the Shroobs have been here. Back at the Shroob Castle, this place complements the game fairly well, and while not as strongly as Bowser's Castle from Superstar Saga did, you still do most of the things you did throughout the game. In fact, some of the stuff you don't do was some of the stuff I personally enjoyed less. And there's also a space shooter sequence which has an easily understood structure, and when you beat the Shroob ships, this happens. It's so random and happy! There is a point where the game plays a prank and sends you down to the basement for more adventuring and a second ascension of the castle. And with new challenges and a different path, I don't feel annoyed by the second climb. You eventually find Peach imprisoned by a mysterious Shroob energy field where Peach learns that the bros have been gathering the Cobalt Star Shards. Shocked by this, Peach attempts to explain what's going on before the Mothership starts attacking the Shroob's own structure. Because, you know, why not? I mean, how did they figure out that the bros were in there? Aren't they going to end up killing their prisoner? Why do they imprison Peach and not just kill her in the first place if they were only going to end up doing this? Didn't they try killing her before? What's stopping them from trying again? And why are they doing it to their own damn structure? The bros go up to the top where they find the saucer to test their firing skills on the mothership. This battle is challenging, fun, and a nice reprisal of the ship fighting sequence. When you defeat the ship, it crashes into the head and knocks the barrier around Peach out. They take a look at the crashed mothership and Princess Shroob comes out and fights the bros. Princess Shroob has a really long attack, but the rest of her is fine. She has a shield requiring a certain number of hits to break, which makes good use of the trampoline and copy flower, and there's just chipping away at her health. Now when you beat Princess Shroob, things get kind of interesting. Peach herself reveals that she has the final piece of the Cobalt Star, and young Bowser jumps in from the Shroob ship, takes the final piece from Peach and places it with the rest of them. Peach then explains that there was an Elder Shroob princess trapped by Peach inside the Cobalt Star, followed by Peach shattering it. This plot twist sheds light on some mysterious things, such as why the Cobalt Star was broken up, the second figure in Toadbert's drawing, the eyes Kylie saw in the shards, why Toadbert freaked out when he saw 4 of the shards together, why the Shroobs thought it would deem fit to feed Peach to Petey Piranha, and e.gadd's speculation of a link between the Shroobs and the Cobalt Star. Some other things continue to make sense, such as the Cobalt Star sprite saying that gathering all the pieces will defeat the Shroops, because Stuffwell's conclusion was that the sprite was the elder Princess Shroob just deceiving the bros. And this last one's a speculation, but I believe that 5 pieces opening the barrier to Shroob Castle was Princess Shroob acting through them somehow as a means of getting to the 6th shard. On the other hand, I have a number of questions. How does Peach seal someone inside the Cobalt Star? Why was the Cobalt Star equipped with this ability? How did Peach know that the Cobalt Star could do this? How did she know that breaking the Cobalt Star will keep Princess Shroob in there? How did the piece land in Bowser's castle? How did the piece wind up in the Star Shrine? And how did the Cobalt Star get destroyed when the Elder Princess Shroob came back? This plot twist doesn't make sense! I know I talked about how there are no rules to man-made science, but the fact that the Cobalt Star can do this doesn't work when it was designed to travel through time. I can imagine how you'd advertise it. Want to travel through time and imprison someone with the same item? Then you want the Cobalt Star. Another question I have is, why was the Cobalt Star designed to look ugly? Blue and green can't be seen without another colour in between. Granted, that's not a product of the plot twist, but it's still worth pointing out because I actually liked the visuals in Partners in Time, even though there were sprites. Super Mario 64 DS proved that the DS was capable of polygons, but a lot of the textures in that game were very pixelated, and sticking with sprites for Partners in Time both looked good and complemented its gameplay. It would be unfair to compare them to Superstar Saga's presentation due to being on a more powerful system, but in terms of how they've aged, I think Partners in Time has done a better job, even arguably better than some of the later Mario and Luigi games. Okay, back to business. Princess Shroob jumps and the platform they're on rises up, and I don't know how that— No, I've asked enough questions already. Okay, so the fight begins and Peach helps out a little with a star, but it's kind of deceptive. With this in place, you'd think that fewer ships would mean a less devastating attack, but I would say the hardest attack to defend against comes from 2 ships, then 0 ships, 1 ship, and then I would deem 3 ships to be the easiest. Shouldn't the 3 ships attack be the hardest? It would create a greater incentive to destroy them. By the way, I don't even know what damage this attack does because I never fail at defending it. That being said, she may not use them all in one attack. With 3 ships, she may do a 2-ship attack and a 1-ship attack in a single turn, but those together should be equally devastating to a 3-ship attack. There's nothing else to her, no puzzles or anything like that, but I do love her sprite when she gets hit. She looks like a comedian making a joke. What's the deal with mushrooms? Am I right? When you've beaten her, she transforms into— I'm not sure what. Like, could they name this transformation? Super Shroob? Power Shroob? Crown Shroob? Ultimate Shroob? Queen Shroob? Nope, just Princess Shroob. This part is supposed to be the actual final boss with the boss puzzle and crazy music. Now the battle itself proves the usefulness of the mixed flowers on all arms, and when you get rid of them, the shells are useful on the legs. And when that's done, I found myself using the cannon to attack the crown, and when the head's unsafe, the copy flowers shine. Different weapons have different usefulness, and using the copy flowers and cannon on the legs and crown and trampolines and pocket chomps on the head, provided there's no other target, could be considered an alternate strategy. So offensively this battle is good, but defensively, there are a lot of problems. The legs here move too fast to actually jump them all, especially when there's 3. The arms attacks aren't terrible. The red and green beams are hard to follow, but they do give a nod to the Shrooboid Brat, and the arms grabbing the bros can be a bit hard to follow, but aren't terrible. I like the gas cloud attack from the head, but not the ship's one. The fiery ones fall to Mario and the electrical ones fall to Luigi, which is a nod to the hand powers in Superstar Saga, and is pretty convenient if you've played Superstar Saga, and if you haven't, well then it sucks to be you. Like seriously, there's no guarantee players have played Superstar Saga. Would a green flame for Luigi be so hard? When you've beaten her, she turns into a mushroom and they return to the castle, and I don't know how— No! They discover that baby's tears are deadly to the Shroobs and spread it all over the kingdom. It's a nice little cutscene seeing all the Shroobs disappear and turn back into characters, and I won't question the silly convenient science behind it because I'm just about done with that. e.gadd comes in the time machine and takes them all back to the present, followed by the discovery of adult Bowser in the castle. The purple mushroom goes up to adult Bowser and enters his mouth. Bowser wakes up with Shroob power and battles the bros. In this fight you can't attack, but it's pretty simple because every attack you dodge or counter will damage the Shroob ghost in the top screen. This battle intrigues me. It's a good defense tester where the Princess Shroob fight was a good offense tester. Does that mean this battle was put in to compensate for the poor attacks in the actual final boss? I don't think this fight would be necessary if Princess Shroob had more reasonable attacks. When you beat him, we have a remix of the ending music from Superstar Saga and the characters say their goodbyes. The babies give their hammers to the adults, but I think this moment would have been better if the adults had the hammers the whole game and gave them to the babies at the end. That said, I definitely prefer the babies having the hammers in the game over the adults. And of course Luigi gives the last Yoshi cookie he had to baby Luigi, which is my favourite part of the ending. They leave in the time machine, and that's it. There are some bits in Partners in Time that I find to be near excellent and other bits which are disasters. Most of the moves the bros do are good additions, and the one move I regarded as useless is still fun to perform. Most of what you do in battle is an expansion from Superstar Saga's battle mechanics to the baby's additions, although unfortunately loses its relationship with the field moves, mostly evident in the bros items. I don't think the babies had the same effect on Partners in Time that Luigi had in Superstar Saga. The opening doesn't start off with the babies being resistant or weak to the point where they grow, but instead they seem to start off pretty good at what they're already going to do throughout the game, especially Baby Mario. In fact, I've seen a bigger focus on Luigi here, not that that was pulled off very well either, mostly because they were trying too hard. The game does well in its theming with a strong presence of the enemy and providing humour, but it fails in regards to the story. A lot of things are either really convenient or just plain don't make sense, like the plot twist. In Superstar Saga, when something happened beyond the bros' control, it worked against them, and they themselves had to work for something better. In Partners in Time, things beyond the bros' control mostly worked for their advantage. There's a greater sense of growth in characters when they work for their results rather than it just being given to them, and it also justifies the player's actions as to why they're doing what they're doing. Of course, a faulty story isn't enough for me to dislike a game. I'll play Partners in Time again, mostly just because it's fun. It couldn't hold a candle to Superstar Saga's nuance and interesting world, but it's good to just play and enjoy once in a while, and because of that, some of those silly things just don't matter too much. I mean, it's not like Mario games have a history of story focus, so I find it easy just to set that aside and enjoy a fun game. I'm Hat-Wearing Gamer, and this has been Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. And ha! I did the review, and nothing happened. You were wrong.
Fine. This is a threat. I have to tell him.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for the awesome 47 minutes of time you gave to watching this video. Super huge thank you, a shout out to my friend Hannah for not just acting in this video, but she also helped out with some of the audio editing, which I really appreciate. So thank you to her. She also did that for Superstar Saga, but I didn't want to shout her out then because she was yet to appear in the video, you know what I mean? So I didn't want to spoil it, but I'm giving her the shout out now because she absolutely deserves it. Thank you so much, Hannah. Keep an eye out for the third video, which is Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, the third game in the Mario & Luigi RPG series, which will happen in time soon, hopefully. We'll see. But regardless, thank you so much everyone for watching this video, and I'll see you guys later.